Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Arlene Diamco, the MultiDimensional MD. My mission is to help bring the intuitive aspects of health back to medicine in practical and tangible ways so that you can access deeper healing in your everyday lives and experience more peace, love, and joy. And before I get to today's episode, I have a quick announcement because it is only 2 days until my book launches. And this has been a project that has been going on for 3.5 years of writing, editing, designing. And I really had decided to do this when my dad had passed like 3.5 years ago. And I decided that I wanted to live fully. And part of that meant for me to share my message and get that out into the world. So, this is my gift to all of you, and I hope you love it. This is what it looks like. If you're on YouTube, then you can see the video, and it's called I Am Intuitive, a multidimensional guide to embrace your inner light. And it helps you do just that. It has lots of great stories and anecdotes, a lot of practical exercises. So this isn't just a narrative of my life and my practice, but this is a book for you so that you can feel empowered to access your own inner health, to draw out that inner light, and that you can experience life more fully with more ease. And what I say every week, more peace, love, and joy. And I hope that you get a lot out of it. So let me know. I'll be posting a link for where to order that in just a couple days. So for today's episode is on stress eating because I feel like most people have been stress eating at some point in their lives, if not now. And then with all the travel that I've been doing, sometimes I could feel my adrenals just sort of pittering out a little bit, and I could feel myself craving more carbs and reaching for things that I don't usually like to have on a regular basis. So in order to understand stress eating more, then I wanted to talk about it here and talk about first understanding some hormones behind stress eating. So I'll go over 3 hormones, and then about how comfort foods have to do with the reward system. And then I'm going to talk about how to navigate stress without overeating. So 3 different parts. So this first part is understanding 3 hormones behind stress eating. So when you're stressed, your brain activates the fight or flight response via the sympathetic nervous system. That is one response to stress. But this has a lot to do with the overeating because your body is releasing more stress hormones, specifically cortisol, adrenaline, and growth hormone. So I'm going to talk a bit about each one of those things. So first with cortisol. Cortisol is a steroid hormone produced by your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands look like little caps on each side of your kidneys. So I'm sorry, on top of each of your kidneys. So you have 2 kidneys, and so you have 2 adrenal glands sitting on top of those. And cortisol levels initially increase with stress, but with too much stress, they can start to fall flat. So you can get varying responses there. And both high and low cortisol levels can contribute to stress eating because your body is basically demanding more energy. And how does it get more energy? Through food, and it wants a quick energy. It wants sugar. It wants carbs, and the high cortisol levels will give you that wired and tired feeling. So cortisol stimulates carbohydrate and fat metabolism, trying to push all this energy, the glucose, into your bloodstream. And it also increases the production of glucose, and it increases your body's response to insulin so that the sugars can circulate freely. So it gives you energy for that fight or flight response. It actually it decreases your body's response to insulin. So it contributes some insulin resistance. So cortisol and insulin are meant to kind of regulate each other, to balance each other. The problem is that with chronically high cortisol levels, there will be some redistribution of the fat stores and circulating fat to be deposited in the abdomen. Those cortisol levels will drive you to eat more, look for sweets, for salty and fatty foods, and it will ask your body to just get energy. So note that insulin regulates your glucose in your body by allowing it to enter the cells to be used as energy and keeping it circulating, the circulating levels within normal limits, not too high or too low. So the cortisol is actually asking the sugar to be poured into your bloodstream so that you can access it regularly and immediately. So you can see there starts to be an imbalance when you're stressed for a while. When your adrenal glands peter out, then you get low cortisol levels, and that's when your adrenals are really tired. So in the initial stages, when stress is demanding the adrenals produce more cortisol, and then later on the adrenals get really tired and then they have trouble producing enough cortisol to respond to the stress adequately with enough energy. So those low cortisol levels are going to be associated with more fatigue but then still more salt and sugar cravings because your body is not getting the energy that it needs, and it just keeps reaching for it, and it can't, the cortisol can't meet the demands by pouring the energy into the bloodstream. So it's just going to tell you to like grab it however you can. You'll also see with low cortisol levels, this reliance on caffeine to wake you up. And all of this can disrupt the sleep, which can contribute to more insulin imbalances and more cravings. So that's cortisol. So stay with me because there are some details for each of these things. So the second one I wanted to talk about is epinephrine, which is also known as adrenaline. And this is a catecholamine, which is both a neurotransmitter and hormone. It's released mainly by the adrenal medulla and upon direct stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system. So again, this activates your fight or flight response. So you're from your hypothalamus, pituitary, which are in your head, then activates the sympathetic nervous system and sends signals to the adrenal, especially adrenal medullas, for the epinephrine to be released. And this happens within minutes of feeling stressed. So you can feel those effects of the adrenaline coursing through you. It makes you feel more on high alert. You also have that direct sympathetic nervous system stimulation throughout your body. So you can feel more tension in the body. You can also have increased heart rate. You could have increased blood pressure. You could have tension, headaches, and just ready to go. So it gets you ready for that fight or flight. The adrenaline also promotes sugar production and the breakdown of fat to convert to sugar and ketones, meaning it wants more energy for you to respond to stress. So you're starting to see a theme here that all of these hormones, all of these different chemicals in the body are meant to supply energy to to meet the demands of the stress. But it can only do that for so long before it starts to get tired. Another hormone that is released in response to stress is a growth hormone. So, this is something that isn't talked about quite as often. It's released from the pituitary in response to acute stress, also in order to mobilize energy sources. Now, growth hormone is actually multifunctional, and you'll see this actually with all the different hormones because it can respond in one way to acute stress, but it can respond another way to chronic stress. So elevated in acute stress, but depleted in chronic stress. And then growth hormone can also have different interactions with insulin depending on the situation, which can be confusing to understand its function. We talk about growth hormone a lot in pediatrics because during childhood and adolescence, growth hormone is meant to work together with insulin to promote growth and development. However, growth hormone can actually do the opposite in cases of metabolic stress, including stress eating or excess carbohydrates. And then, like cortisol and adrenaline will counter the effects of insulin, and it stimulates hunger and energy as well as fat metabolism. So, again, in metabolic stress, you're eating those excess carbs, then it will not function the same way it does in kids, where you need that growth hormone to promote normal growth and development. It has more dysfunctional participation in growth and development, meaning that then it will start to promote more of that visceral abdominal fat. So instead of growing up like the kids do, then you start to grow out. And that's similar to the adrenal fatigue and the flattening of the cortisol curve. So you can have a relative growth hormone deficiency in response to chronic stress, because the chronic stress just taxes you out and lowers those levels of growth hormone, and contributing to the growth dysfunction. Like I said, in the adult, looks like increased abdominal fat, but also reduced muscle mass and poor bone density and quality. So this is another thing I talked about, osteoporosis and what you can do about it. But this is another way that your body has difficulty maintaining its bone density and quality in response to chronic stress, because the growth hormone levels start to peter out. So this is also in line with how Edgar Cayce described the cells in the body becoming dysfunctional with excess carbohydrates. So excess carbohydrates makes the function of the different cells go awry. So where it's supposed to be acting in one way, it starts to do the opposite and just not know what to do. So if you are feeling like you are reaching for food, sweets and sugars and fats, anytime you're feeling stressed, there is a reason for it, because physiologically, your body is meant to adapt and equip you with energy to meet whatever your day or night looks like. It's just that over time, it starts to be not so helpful for us. So the next part I want to talk about is understanding comfort foods and the reward system, because there are things that we reach for. Not everyone reaches for the same things. And it's like, why do you reach for certain foods? Well, comfort foods are known to release dopamine, which will be a short-lived effect of increasing mood and that pleasure response. And these foods can have certain memories attached to them. So, for example, last weekend I was at this Filipino event, and they had this feast of Filipino food and so many things I ate growing up, but I don't eat regularly nowadays. So I was so happy to eat all of these things. We'd had a long day, and we were tired. And then it just reminded me of the celebrations in childhood. And I found myself eating past the point of being full and craving the food for days afterward, because of these memories. Every time I would think about it, every time I ate a bite, I remember my grandmother. I would remember certain feel good memories, and I knew that was a part of why I was reaching for them. So it is a part of that pleasure reward system. And now this is really interesting. I'm going to get into some of the details here. So there is this role of what's called the lateral habenula. These are little nuclei of cells that are located near the pineal gland on either side. So the lateral habenula actually helps regulate the reward versus aversion response. So there was a study on mice that were fed high-fat food that would a normally responding lateral habenula would downregulate the reward response so that the mice wouldn't overeat and it wouldn't be considered pleasurable. So this is what it does in humans too. But if you have chronically elevated cortisol levels, then that might be seen in a chronic stress response. Then the lateral habenula is no longer active as it normally is, meaning that eating continues to be associated with pleasure even if you're no longer hungry. So the reward centers keep releasing dopamine, giving you this short-lived feel-good response every time you have certain kinds of food. And so the regulation in the body, the feedback loops have somehow gotten disconnected. And this has to do with also the mind-body disconnect and the lack of integration in the body, right and left hemispheres. So what we can do is to help our bodies and minds reconnect. And I'll talk about more about that in just a moment with navigating stress without overeating. But I found that this point with the lateral habenula was so interesting because it can show you how when a signal gets turned off or we don't have that integration, that you start to get this looping in the body. And looping is static in the body. It's a short circuit, and we can figure out how to address that. That's why I'm taking some time to tell you more about this and describe the details, so that if we understand it better, then we will feel more equipped to know how to navigate it. And the other thing about this lateral habenula, and this is not the only part of the brain, of course, that's involved with regulation of rewards, pleasure, and aversion. But part of why I was interested in it is because it is very close to your pineal gland. And so I think about your pineal gland as, it's responsible for, partially responsible for dreaming and your sleep. But if we think about our conscious manifestation system, it's like, how can we be living dreams awake, like living out our dreams or having clarity of our desires? Or so when the signals have gone awry and you're not getting those proper loops, feedback loops, and instead you're getting more short circuiting, then you can feel less clear. So that's a foggy brain. And you could also be numbing yourself out from fully living because you're just living this loop over and over again, and health is in the flow. So when something's looping, it's stagnant and not healthy, it's not balanced. So I think that's an interesting part of like understanding the physiology, understanding a little bit of anatomy, and then understanding this bigger picture of conscious living and manifestation. So that's what I love to do with this multidimensional approach. And so I hope that makes sense to you somehow, because there's a lot of little details being put together. So if any of this doesn't is unclear to you, then I would love to hear from you and just know, like, where can I help make it more clear? So then when we get to how to navigate stress without overeating, the main thing is to have courage and to slow down so that you can reconnect with yourself. Give yourself a moment to feel your body, to breathe into your body, which can be scary at first because your body is holding onto so many different emotions, especially if you're trying to numb out or address stress with overeating, that there'll be this lack of clarity. So you have to actually acknowledge that and then choose to go into it so that you can be more clear. And then when I was talking about those reward systems and then a short circuit and things not being integrated with right, left sides of the brain, what you can do is incorporate more cross-lateral movements. So these are movements that cross the midline of the body. So even just like hugging yourself like this, or tapping on each side, or just swinging your arms around from side to side, or doing like an eagle pose with yoga and then your legs the other way. Those would all be cross-lateral movements and encourage movement from one side of the brain to the other. So you get more flow, and flow is healthy. So it can help to break up some static loops. Any kind of movement, but if you're conscious about getting some of those cross laterals, it sends signals across the brain. So if they're not getting sent in a balanced way, you can help your body and help your brain by sending signals across the brain. So if there's traffic, sort of like moves the traffic along. And again, breathe into any discomfort that you feel, because there are hidden messages in that discomfort. There are wounded parts of you that are craving self-love. So it just needs you to pay attention to you. And as you open up your courage and awareness, then you can start to identify triggers. When do I stress eat? Is it when I'm overtired? Is it financial stressors, relationship stuff, work, cleaning up the house? That's That's one of mine. So my daughter recently, helped me with this, and she said when I was cleaning out my study at home, she said, "Mommy, I think this is just something you don't like to do," but she said that she would help you, and so this is really great because that leads into that connection with others and having a social support. So, if you feel like you don't have a social support or you're not sure how to connect with others, then actually choosing to help another person helps you establish the connection. And you get just as much, if not even more, in terms of like how your brain and your body feels and responds to helping another person as you do with like helping yourself because we're meant to be in this together. So this gets into the oneness of everything, the oneness of humanity, taking care of ourselves, taking care of the earth. So there are many ways to mitigate stress with overeating, and and to navigate that, and connecting with others is another way. Of course, I guess if you're all stress eating, then it could spiral that, but it does take some acknowledgement of okay, this is what's happening. This is what's being triggered. Am I actually hungry, or am I just reaching out in an unconscious way and filling myself with like empty calories and just looping and looping. So awareness, slow down, be aware, breathe, have courage. And then if you can, of course, some other things, meditate, get a grounding mat. Um, and some other episodes that you might be interested in are the episode 187, which is on Concord grape juice and its remarkable health benefits, which include helping to balance out food cravings and to reduce that carbohydrate craving and restore the natural carbohydrate metabolism and detoxification in the body. There's also episode 141, which is on a multidimensional approach to weight loss. And of course, when my book is here in a couple days, get a copy of that. It will be online, available online at most booksellers. Hopefully, I will get the link out for you as soon as that's live, and I'll post it again in these podcasts. So again, that's I Am Intuitive, a multi-dimensional approach to embrace your inner light, because that is the truth of who you are. That's the truth of who we all are. So I hope that this episode was enlightening on overeating and how to approach that, how to address that. There's so much we can talk about in this one topic alone. So if you have any questions, then please drop them in the comments. I'd love to get back to you. It's just general informational. This is not medical advice or treatment. This is just for educational purposes only. And as always, if you need medical advice, then speak to your healthcare practitioner directly. Otherwise, if you'd like to connect with me, uh, aside from the podcast, you can on Instagram at All Worlds Health, Facebook, All Worlds Health and Pediatrics, and you can sign up for my e-love letters. I send them out about once a week on Wednesdays at allworldshealth.com. If you would like to see a preview and some freebies that are related to the book, then you can go to the publishing website, which is allworldspress.com. So I really appreciate all of you, and thank you so much for your support and encouragement. Anything that you would like me to talk about, let me know, and I'll see if I can get to it. So lots of love to all of you. I believe in you, and I hope that you believe in you too. I'll see you next week. Another episode of The Multidimensional MD. Take care.